The silence that followed Admiral Kane's retreat order was deafening. For 37 years, Marcus Kane had commanded fleets across the galaxy. He'd seen plasma storms that could melt battleships, witnessed black holes swallow entire moons, and fought against alien technologies that defied comprehension. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for what just happened. Jake Peterson, his communications officer, sat frozen at his station. The young man's hands trembled as he stared at the empty tactical display where moments before, 570 ships had been represented by glowing dots. Oh, just scattered survivors limping through space like wounded animals fleeing. A predator they couldn't understand. "Sir," Peterson's voice cracked. Should I send a fleet-wide status report?" Kane almost laughed. Almost. What would they report? That a single human vessel had just demonstrated technology so advanced it made their entire civilization look like children playing with sticks. That one ship, one man, had casually erased the most powerful armada in galactic history? Kane said quietly. "No reports. Not yet. Here's the thing about war, real war. Not the sanitized version they show in the entertainment feeds. It changes you. Every veteran knows that moment when the universe shows you something so fundamentally wrong, so impossibly terrifying that your mind has to rebuild itself just to function. Kane was having that moment right now. Lisa Rodriguez, his tactical officer, broke the silence. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the Sol system. It's like the entire system is alive." Kane forced himself to look at her display. What he saw made his blood run cold. The readings showed gravitational anomalies around every planet, energy patterns that suggested massive structures, existing in dimensions their sensors couldn't fully detect. Earth wasn't just defended by one impossible ship. It was the center of something vast and incomprehensible. But here's what really terrified him. The humans had let them live. Captain Mitchell could have erased every single ship in the fleet. Instead, he'd chosen mercy. And that choice said more about humanity's true power than any weapon demonstration ever could. Admiral Peterson spoke again, his voice steadier. "Now, the crew is asking questions. They want to know what happened to the missing ships. They want to know if we're going home." Kane turned to face his bridge crew. These were hardened warriors, veterans of a dozen campaigns. But right now, they looked like frightened children. And honestly, he felt the same way. You know what the funny thing about impossible situations is? They force you to ask impossible questions. Like, what do you tell a galaxy that's spent millennia believing it's at the top of the food chain? How do you explain that somewhere out there? A species has evolved so far beyond conventional understanding that they might as well be gods. "Listen to me," Kane said, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades in command. "What we witnessed today changes everything. Not just for us, not just for the hegemony, but for every civilization in the galaxy." He paused, letting that sink in. Outside the viewports, space looked normal. Stars twinkled in their ancient patterns, gas clouds drifted in cosmic winds, and the universe continued its eternal dance. But Kane knew the truth. Now they were longer alone at the top of the evolutionary ladder. "The humans didn't just defeat us," he continued. "They transcended us. That ship, the Prometheus, wasn't using advanced technology. It was using science so far beyond our understanding that it might as well be magic." Rodriguez looked up from her station. "Sir, are you saying they single quotes read ... what?" Kane replied firmly. "Gods are mythical. What we saw today was real. The humans have evolved into something new, something that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They've weaponized evolution itself. The implications were staggering. Humans could manipulate reality at the quantum level if they could exist in multiple states of being. Then everything the galaxy thought it knew about physics, about warfare, about the very nature of existence, was wrong. But wait, there's more to this story. It'll make your spine tingle with both excitement and dread. Peterson's console chimed with an incoming transmission. "Sir, we're receiving a message. It's from Earth." Kane felt his heart. "Skip. Put it through." Captain Mitchell's voice filled the bridge again, but this time it carried a different tone. Less warning, more ... invitation. Admiral Kane, this is Captain Mitchell. I know you're wondering what just happened. I know you're trying to understand how one ship could defeat 600. The answer is simple. We stopped being just human. The transmission included data packets, technical specifications that made their ship's computers strained to process. Kane watched in amazement as holographic displays showed energy patterns that violated every known law of physics. We're sending you information, Mitchell continued. Not weapons data, not tactical specifications, but something far more important. We're sending you the truth about what's coming. The display shifted, showing long-range sensor readings from beyond the galactic rim. What Kane saw made his blood freeze all over again. Massive objects, centities, the size of moons, were moving through the void between galaxies. Hundreds of them. All heading towards civilized space. They're called the Shepherds, Mitchell explained. They've been culling advanced civilizations. For millions of years, maintaining cosmic balance through controlled extinction. They're the reason most species never advance beyond a certain technological threshold. Kane gripped his command chair. This was bigger than human evolution, bigger than galactic politics. This was about survival itself. But here's the thing about evolution. Mitchell's voice carried a note of grim determination. It's not just about adapting to your environment. Sometimes it's about transcending it entirely. We learn to exist beyond the Shepherd's perception, beyond their ability to cull us. The transmission showed images of transformed humans, beings of pure consciousness that could manipulate matter and energy at will. They were beautiful and terrifying, familiar yet utterly alien. We're offering to teach you, Mitchell said. We can show you how to evolve as we have, how to become something the Shepherds can't destroy. But the choice has to be yours. Kane stared at the display, his mind racing. Evolution or extinction? Transform into something unrecognizable or face annihilation from entities beyond comprehension? Some choice. How long do we have? Kane asked. 18 months until the Shepherds reach the core worlds. 8 months to complete the evolution process. You have 8 months to decide the fate of your entire species. The transmission ended, leaving Kane alone with the weight of impossible knowledge. Around him, his crew processed what they'd heard. The silence stretched until Peterson finally spoke. Admiral, what do we do now? Kane looked at his tactical display one more time. 30 ships out of 600, survivors of an encounter with the future itself. They were heading home to deliver news that would either save the galaxy or drive it into chaos. Now, Kane said, his voice carrying new resolve. Now we prepare for the hardest conversation in galactic history. We're going to tell the hegemony that everything they believe about the universe is wrong. As the battered fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Sol system behind. Kane couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just witnessed the end of one age and the beginning of another. The age of human dominance had begun. The galaxy would never be the same. But the real question wasn't whether they could adapt to this new reality. The real question was whether they could evolve fast enough to survive what was coming next. Because somewhere in the dark between galaxies, ancient predators were stirring, drawn by the scent of a species that had dared to break the cosmic rules. The countdown had begun. And evolution was no longer optional. It was the only path to survival. Speaking of evolution and transformation, if you found this story compelling, you'll love our next video about the power of compounding. How small changes, sustained over time, can create exponential results that seem impossible. Just like how humanity's gradual evolution led to transcendence, your personal growth compounds in ways that will surprise you. Click the end screen to discover how you can harness this same principle in your own life. The silence in the hall of testimony was different now. Not the respectful quiet of representatives listening to military briefings, but the uncomfortable hush that follows when someone speaks an impossible truth. Admiral Kane stood alone at the center of the vast chamber, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him, eyes that looked at him not with respect, but with pity. Chancellor Benjamin Wright's fingers drummed against his marble podium, each tap echoing through the hall like a countdown timer. His weathered face bore the expression of a man trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. For 40 years, Wright had led the hegemony through wars, diplomatic crises, and technological upheavals. But this This was beyond his comprehension. Admiral Kane Wright said finally, his voice carrying the careful tone politicians use when addressing the mentally unstable.
Boys.
You're asking us to believe that humanity, a species we've classified as barely capable of interstellar travel somehow, developed technology that makes our entire military obsolete overnight? Kane felt his jaw clench. He'd prepared for skepticism, but not this level of willful blindness. Chancellor, I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm reporting what happened. I had 578 ships under my command simply ceased to exist. No explosions, no wreckage, no energy discharge. Gone. You know what's fascinating about denial? It's humanity's most powerful defense mechanism. When faced with information that threatens our worldview, our brains literally refuse to process it. And right now, Kane was watching an entire government's collective mind slam shut like a steel trap. General Robert Nash rose from his seat, his cybernetic eye worry as it focused on Kane. The metallic sound was oddly comforting, at least. Some technology still worked the way it was supposed to. Admiral, in your 30 years of service, have you ever suffered a psychological break? The question hit Kane like a physical blow. 3 decades of flawless service, countless victories, and now they were questioning his sanity because he'd witnessed something that didn't fit their understanding of reality. Show them the recordings, Kane said, his voice barely controlled. The holographic display flickered to life, casting an eerie blue glow across the assembled faces. What they saw should have silenced every doubt, should have sent chills down every spine. The Prometheus moved through space like a living thing, phasing in and out of dimensions that shouldn't exist. Massive warships, each one a technological marvel representing centuries of advancements, simply vanished upon contact. But instead of awe, Kane saw something worse: determined disbelief. Dr. Jennifer Cole, the hegemony's chief science advisor, stood with the practiced confidence of someone who'd spent her career explaining away anomalies. Clearly compromised data, she announced, as if stating a simple fact. Advanced cyber warfare? Probably. The humans have somehow corrupted our sensor networks to create this elaborate illusion. Kane wanted to laugh, or scream. Maybe both. Here's the thing about experts. Sometimes their expertise becomes a prison, Dr. Cole knew. So much about what was possible that she couldn't recognize the impossible when it stared her in the face. What about the missing crews? Kane's voice cracked with desperation. Millions of people, Dr. Cole. Are they all part of this illusion? The chamber erupted in murmurs. Representatives huddled together, whispering theories that ranged from mechanical failures to mass hallucinations. Anything but the truth, Kane was trying to tell them. But wait, here's where the story takes a turn. That'll make your blood run cold, in the back of the chamber. Dr. Amanda Ross sat in silence, her mind racing through decades of research. While her colleagues debated the impossibility of Kane's report, she was thinking about patterns, human patterns. Evolutionary patterns that didn't match any other species in the galaxy. As the assembly descended into chaos, Dr. Ross quietly approached Kane. The Admiral stood alone now, abandoned by the very institution he'd served his entire life. The holographic display still showed the Prometheus, its impossible geometry, a testament to technology that transcended understanding. Dr. Ross said softly. Kane turned, surprised to find an ally in his moment of isolation. Everyone else thinks I've lost my mind. Everyone else hasn't spent 20 years studying human development. Dr. Ross moved to the holographic controls, her fingers dancing across the interface with scientific precision. Admiral, what do you know about evolutionary leaps? Here's something that'll blow your mind. Evolution isn't always gradual. Sometimes species make sudden, dramatic jumps that seem to violate everything we know about natural development. And humans, they've been doing it for their entire recorded history. Dr. Ross brought up a comparison chart that made Kane's breath catch. Every known species in the galaxy followed predictable development curves, steady, linear advancement over millions of years. But the human curve looked like a heartbeat monitor during a cardiac episode. Look at this. Dr. Ross pointed to the dramatic spikes. Stone tools to agriculture, 1,000 years. Agriculture to industrial revolution, Another 8,000? Industrial revolution to nuclear weapons 200 years. Nuclear weapons to space travel 50 years. Each leap shorter than the last, each advancement more dramatic. Kane stared at the data, pieces of a cosmic puzzle finally clicking into place. Hey, they're accelerating.
Exponentially.
And Admiral, if this pattern holds true, humanity didn't just develop new technology. They've made another evolutionary leap. Possibly their biggest one yet. The implications were staggering. If humans could evolve technologically at exponential rates, then the 6 months of monitoring data the hegemony had collected was meaningless. It was like trying to understand a lightning storm by studying a single raindrop. But here's the part that should terrify every way. Civilization in the galaxy. Dr. Ross pulled up classified intelligence reports data that made Kane's encounter look like a minor incident. The Andromedan Trade Federation had lost ships near human space. The Rigel Collective reported spatial anomalies that defied explanation. The Vegan Republic had quietly reassigned their entire exploration fleet away from Earth's sector. They're all connected, Dr. Ross whispered. Every unexplained incident, every missing ship, every spatial anomaly, they all point to the same conclusion. Humanity isn't just advanced. They've become something new entirely. Kane felt the weight of cosmic significance settling on his shoulders. This wasn't about military defeat or technological superiority. This was about the emergence of a new form of life, one that existed beyond conventional understanding of physics and reality. Meanwhile, 300 light-years away, senior analyst William Cooper sat in the depths of hegemony intelligence, staring at the same patterns Dr. Ross had discovered. Unlike the politicians in the Grand Assembly, Cooper's job was to see threats before they became disasters. Right now, every instinct screamed that they were facing something unprecedented. Cooper opened secure channels to field agents across the galaxy. If the leadership wouldn't acknowledge the truth, then he'd investigate it himself. Because somewhere in the data streams and intelligence reports, a terrifying picture was emerging, one that suggested humanity's demonstration at Sol was just the beginning. And in the depths of space, Captain David Mitchell monitored the galaxy's response to their message. He'd hoped that mercy would be enough, that showing restraint would prevent further conflict. But as reports filtered in from across civilized space, Mitchell realized something that chilled him to his enhanced consciousness. The galaxy wasn't just refusing to believe the truth about human evolution. They were actively denying it, explaining it away, dismissing it as impossible. Which meant they would keep probing, keep testing, keep sending fleets until they forced humanity to demonstrate their capabilities again. And next time, mercy might not be an option. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of every civilization in the galaxy. The question wasn't whether humanity would reveal their true power, it was whether the galaxy would survive the revelation. You know what's interesting about pivotal moments in history? They often look mundane from the outside, like bureaucrats arguing in a government building. But sometimes those arguments determine the survival of entire species. Speaking of transformation and exponential change, if this story of rapid evolution fascinated you, you need to see our next video about the power of compounding. Just like humanity's accelerating development curve, small, consistent changes in your life can create results that seem impossible. The same principles that allowed humans to evolve beyond recognition can transform your personal and professional life in ways you never imagined. Click the end screen to discover how exponential growth works in the real world. The holographic form of senior analyst William Cooper flickered like a dying light bulb as he materialized aboard the Night's Edge. 3 months had passed since Admiral Kane's impossible report. 3 months of sleepless nights and classified briefings that painted an increasingly terrifying picture. Cooper had built his career on finding patterns others missed, connecting dots that seemed unrelated. But this was beyond pattern recognition. This was about survival. Captain Maria Santos stood at rigid attention, her crew mirroring her posture with military precision. The Night's Edge was no ordinary vessel. It was Hegemony Intelligence's crown jewel, a stealth frigate so advanced it could slip past black whole event horizons undetected. If something could hide from the Night's Edge, It was operating on principles that made their best technology look like stone axes. "Sir, we've reached the coordinates you specified," Santos reported, her voice carrying the controlled tension of someone venturing into unknown territory. "The Sol System perimeter." Cooper's projections stabilized as he absorbed the tactical displays surrounding him. Every screen showed normal space stars in their expected positions, planetary orbits following predictable paths, nothing to suggest the cosmic upheaval that Kane had described. But Cooper hadn't survived 20 years in intelligence by trusting appearances. "Passive scans only," he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood the stakes. "If Admiral Kane's report is accurate, we don't want to attract attention. You know what's funny about cutting-edge technology? It makes you feel invincible right up until the moment you discover something that treats your best efforts like a child's toy." Cooper was about to have that humbling experience in the most spectacular way possible. Dr. Emily Parker, the ship's science officer, looked up from her station with the expression of someone whose instruments were telling her impossible things. "Sir, we're getting very strange readings from the inner system." "Strange how?" Cooper asked, though part of him already dreaded the answer. "The space around the third planet, it's not empty. There are gravitational anomalies suggesting massive objects, but our sensors can't detect anything physically there." Cooper felt his blood turn to ice water. The implications were staggering. If objects large enough to create gravitational signatures were somehow invisible to their sensors, then human technology wasn't just advanced, it was operating on principles that transcended conventional physics. "Elaborate," he said, his voice steady despite the fear creeping up his spine. "It's like there's a fleet of invisible ships in orbit around Earth. Hundreds of them, possibly thousands. They're creating gravitational distortions consistent with massive vessels, but they're not showing up on any of our detection systems, except gravitational sensors." Captain Santos exchanged a look with her intelligence officer that spoke volumes. Both had served in the Centauri conflicts. Both had seen alien technology that defied explanation. But this was different, and this wasn't just advanced, it was incomprehensible. Next 72 hours transformed Cooper's understanding of humanity from curious concern to existential terror. The invisible fleet moved with precision that made hegemony military formations look clumsy. Ships the size of dreadnoughts patrolled dimensional spaces that shouldn't exist, following flight patterns that suggested a defensive grid of unprecedented sophistication. But here's where the story takes a turn. That'll make your spine tingle with both awe and absolute horror. "Sir," Dr. Parker's whisper carried across the bridge like a death sentence. "We're detecting dimensional rifts near the fourth planet. Something is emerging from ... somewhere else." Watched the tactical display with the fascination of someone witnessing the birth of a new universe. Reality itself seemed to fold and twist, creating apertures that led to spaces beyond three-dimensional geometry. And from these impossible doorways, something emerged that made their computers crash trying to process what they were seeing. The Prometheus materialized from what could only be described as a fold in space-time itself. But this wasn't the single vessel Kane had described. As Cooper watched in growing terror, the ship began to change, its hull flowing like liquid metal, sections folding into configurations that violated every law of physics he understood. "Mass multiplication?" Dr. Parker gasped, her scientific training warring with the evidence before her eyes. "No, but that's impossible. Conservation of energy, conservation of mass, apparently not as absolute as we thought," Cooper muttered. Watching one ship become 10, then 50, then 100 identical vessels, each one registering as completely real on their sensors. Here's something that should terrify every military strategist in the galaxy. If one human could control 100 ships simultaneously, then Kane's encounter hadn't been with humanity's military might, it had been with a single individual playing with powers beyond comprehension. "Sir," Communications Officer James Wright's voice cracked with fear, "we're receiving a transmission. It's from the Prometheus." The voice that filled the bridge was calm, measured, and absolutely terrifying in its casual confidence. "Vessel Night's Edge, this is Captain Mitchell. You've been observing us for 3 days. Did you learn what you came to learn?" Cooper felt his world tilt sideways. Their stealth systems were legendary, capable of hiding from sensors that could detect individual quantum fluctuations. And yet this human had known they were there all along, had probably been watching them watch him with the amusement of a parent, observing a child's hide-and-seek game. But wait, do you think that's impressive? What happened next redefined Cooper's understanding of what was possible in this universe. Space around the night's edge began to shimmer like heat waves on summer asphalt. One by one, the invisible ships of the human fleet became visible, revealing a sight that made Cooper's mind reel. Not hundreds of vessels, not thousands, but what appeared to be an infinite armada stretching across dimensions he couldn't perceive. This is proof, Mitchell's voice carried across impossible distances. Humanity didn't develop slowly and predictably like other species. We learned to weaponize evolution itself. We learned to become more than we were. The fleet began to move not through space, but through reality itself. Ships appeared and disappeared in patterns that made the Night's Edge's navigation systems fail, demonstrating technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. But we're not conquerors, Mitchell continued, and there was something almost sad in his voice. We never wanted to become this. We just wanted to survive. Survive what? Cooper found himself asking, though he suspected the answer would haunt. His nightmares, what Mitchell showed them next, made every previous revelation pale in comparison. Images flooded their screens, vast entities existing in the spaces between galaxies. Creatures of pure energy that fed on the collapse of civilizations. Machines older than stars that awakened whenever a species grew too advanced. We call them the Shepherds, Mitchell explained, his words carrying the weight of cosmic horror. They've been culling the galaxy for millions of years, keeping species at manageable levels of development. They're the reason most civilizations never advance. Beyond a certain technological threshold, Cooper's hands trembled as the implications crashed over him. The Shepherds weren't just humanity's problem, they were coming for everyone. Every advanced civilization in the galaxy is about to face extinction from entities that existed beyond conventional understanding. But there is hope, Mitchell said, and Cooper grabbed onto those words like a drowning man clutching a lifeline. We can teach you. We can show you how to evolve as we have, how to become something the Shepherds can't destroy. The offer hung in space like a cosmic ultimatum. Evolve into something unrecognizable, or face annihilation from predators beyond imagination. And if they don't accept, Cooper asked, his voice barely a whisper, then we'll save who we can and let the rest face the Shepherds alone. The transmission ended, leaving Cooper alone with knowledge that would either save the galaxy or drive it into chaos. As he watched the impossible fleet continue its dimensional dance, he realized that humanity hadn't just evolved technologically, they'd transcended the very concept of what life could become. Set course for hegemony prime, he ordered, his voice heavy with the weight of impossible responsibility. Psst. Maximum burn. But even as the Night's Edge jumped to hyperspace, carrying evidence that should convince any rational being, Cooper knew the truth. The Assembly would dismiss this just as they had dismissed Kane's report. Politics and pride would blind them to reality until it was too late, and somewhere in the depths of space, ancient things were stirring, drawn by the scent of a species that had dared to break the cosmic rules. The countdown to extinction had begun, and evolution was no longer was the only path to survival. Speaking of evolution and exponential change, if this revelation about humanity's transformation amazed you, you absolutely must see our next video about the power of compounding. It's just like how humanity evolved from primitive to transcendent. Through accelerating development, small, consistent changes in your life compound into extraordinary results. The same principles that allowed humans to leap beyond physical limitations can transform your personal and professional growth in ways that seem impossible. Click the end screen to discover how you can harness exponential development in your own life. The Grand Assembly Chamber had never felt smaller. Senior analyst William Cooper stood where Admiral Kane had once been dismissed as delusional. But now the evidence surrounding him was so overwhelming that even the most stubborn politicians couldn't deny reality. Holographic displays painted a nightmare across the vast hall dimensional readings that broke physics textbooks. Sensor data that made veteran scientists weep, and most terrifying of all, the deep space monitoring reports that confirmed humanity's darkest warning. Dr. Amanda Ross stepped forward, her voice cutting through the stunned silence like a scalpel through flesh. "The signatures are unmistakable," she announced, each word carrying the weight of civilization's potential doom. Entities approximately the size of moons, moving at near-light speed, consuming everything in their path. They're not ships there, living creatures, and they're heading directly for the core worlds. Chancellor Benjamin Wright's face had drained of all color, his political composure cracking like ice under pressure. "How long do we have?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence waiting to be pronounced. Dr. Ross manipulated the holographic display, and the chamber filled with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy that would haunt nightmares for generations to come. "Based on current trajectory, 18 months until they reach hegemony space," she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. But that's not our biggest problem. You know what's worse than facing one unstoppable? Cosmic predator. It's discovering there are hundreds of them, all converging on your location like antibodies responding to an infection. The display shifted, revealing red markers emerging from the void between galaxies, not from one direction, from everywhere, as if the universe itself had decided that advanced civilization was a disease that needed curing. "They're not just coming from one direction," Cooper explained, his analysis cutting through the representative's shocked silence. "They're emerging from the void between galaxies, from directions we didn't even know existed. Hundreds of them, all converging on civilized space." The silence that followed was the kind that precedes either revolution or surrender. Representatives from dozens of species sat frozen, their minds struggling to process the reality that everything they'd built, everything they'd achieved, was about to be erased by entities older than their oldest myths. But here's where the story takes a turn. That'll either save the galaxy or damn it forever. "There is one option," Cooper continued, his words carrying the weight of species survival. "The humans have offered to help us evolve as they have, to become something the shepherds can't destroy." General Robert Nash slammed his cybernetic fist. On his desk, the metallic clang echoing through the chamber like a war drum. "At what cost?" demanded, his voice filled with the fury of a warrior facing an enemy he couldn't fight. "What do they want in return?" Cooper's answer should have been reassuring, but somehow it made everything worse. "Nothing," he replied. "They're offering to share their technology freely. But there's a catch. The evolution process isn't reversible. Once we begin, we can't go back to what we were." Think about that for a moment. Imagine being offered immortality. Unlimited power, transcendence beyond your wildest dreams, and the only price is giving up everything that makes you ... you. That's the choice facing every civilization in the galaxy right now. The debate that erupted was unlike anything the Assembly had ever witnessed. Representatives screamed across species lines, accusation flew like plasma bolts, and the very foundations of galactic civilization cracked under the pressure of an impossible decision. Some demanded immediate acceptance of humanity's offer, while others insisted it was an elaborate trap designed to make them slaves to human will. But while politicians argued, the universe continued its countdown to extinction. Admiral Marcus Kane stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above Hegemony Prime, watching the impossible vessel approach through space that seemed to bend around its presence. The irony was so sharp it could cut the same people who'd questioned his sanity were now begging him to make contact with the beings who demonstrated power beyond comprehension. Admiral, his aide Thomas Anderson, approached with the careful manner of someone handling unstable explosives. "The human ship is requesting permission to dock." Kane nodded, his eyes fixed on the Prometheus as it materialized in local space without any detectable method of arrival. But this time, something was different. The vessel that had once radiated barely contained violence now seemed almost ... peaceful, more organic than mechanical, more alive than built. What happened next redefined Kane's understanding of what it meant to exist. Captain David Mitchell materialized on the docking bay, not teleported, not transported, but simply chose to exist in that location. He was recognizably human, yet fundamentally changed. His eyes held depths that spoke of experiences spanning multiple dimensions, and his very presence seemed to bend reality around him like a stone dropped in still water. Admiral Kane, Mitchell said, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated in spaces Kane couldn't perceive. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Captain Mitchell," Kane replied, fighting to maintain his composure while reality shifted around him. "My government has authorized me to discuss your offer." "Walk with me," Mitchell said. And suddenly, they were somewhere else entirely. Not teleported, not moved. The space around them had simply become a different place, a vast library with shelves stretching into infinity, filled with books that wrote themselves as Kane watched. The transition was so seamless, so natural, that Kane's mind struggled to process what had happened. "This is the archive," Mitchell explained, gesturing to the impossible structure surrounding them. "Every piece of knowledge humanity has ever accumulated, and much that we've discovered from other sources. The Shepherds aren't the first threat. The galaxy has faced Admiral. They're just the latest." Mitchell gestured to one of the shelves, and a book materialized in his hand like thought becoming substance. Its pages showed images that made Kane's mind real civilizations that had risen and fallen across cosmic epochs, species that had evolved beyond recognition, and most disturbing of all, the pattern of culling that had been repeated across millions of years. "The Shepherds maintain balance," Mitchell continued, his words carrying the weight of cosmic truth. "They allow species to develop to a certain point, then eliminate them before they can become a threat to the cosmic order. They're gardeners, Admiral, and we're the weeds they've come to pull." Kane studied the book, its pages showing the systematic destruction of countless civilizations. "How did you escape their notice?" "By learning to exist in multiple states simultaneously." "Not just human anymore, Admiral. We're human, and something else, existing in dimensions the Shepherds can't perceive or affect. But the process, Mitchell's expression grew heavy with the weight of transformation. "It changes you. Fundamentally." The book's pages shifted, showing the evolution of human consciousness across multiple dimensions, be beautiful and terrifying. Familiar yet utterly alien beings of pure thought and energy that had once been as mortal as Kane himself. "What do you become?" Kane asked, though he dreaded the answer. "More than we were? Less than we were? Something new?" Mitchell's smile carried infinite sadness. "We can teach your species to evolve as we have, but you need to understand theirs. No going back. The beings you'll become will remember being what you are now, but they won't be the same." The weight of that revelation settled on Kane like the gravity of a neutron star. To transform into something unrecognizable, or face extinction from entities beyond imagination. And if we refuse, then you face the Shepherds as you are. You might survive. Most won't. But here's the part that should terrify and inspire you in equal measure. "There's something else," Mitchell said quietly. "The evolution process isn't just about survival. It's about becoming part of something larger. Once you've evolved, you'll be connected to every other evolved consciousness in the galaxy. You'll be part of us." Kane felt his individuality recoil. At the implications, a collective, not exactly. More like symphony. Each consciousness maintains its individuality, but becomes part of a greater harmony. "It's beautiful, Admiral. But it's also the end of your species as you know it." The book closed with finality that seemed to echo across dimensions. "How long do we have to decide?" "The Shepherds will arrive in 16 months. The evolution process takes 8 months to complete. You have 8 months to make your choice." Reality reasserted itself around them, and they were back in the docking bay. Mitchell began to fade, his form becoming translucent as he prepared to return to whatever dimensional space he truly inhabited. "Admiral," Mitchell said, his voice carrying across impossible distances, "I want you to know we didn't choose this lightly. We fought the transformation for decades, hoping to find another way. But in the end, evolution was the only path to survival." Captain Kane called out desperately, "Are you still human?" Mitchell's smile was beautiful and terrible and utterly alien. "I remember being human. Sometimes I think that's enough." and then he was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of ozone and the crushing weight of species survival resting on Kane's shoulders, as Kane prepared his report for the Grand Assembly. He couldn't escape the feeling that they stood at the edge of an evolutionary cliff. Jump and become something unrecognizable. Stay and face extinction from predators beyond comprehension. In the depths of space, the first shepherd entities had already begun their work. Entire star systems went dark as the ancient gardeners harvested their crop, their hunger driving them ever deeper into the galaxy's heart. The choice was crystallizing with each passing moment: evolve or die. But what Kane didn't yet understand was that evolution was just the beginning of humanity's true plan for cosmic survival. Speaking of transformation, and making impossible choices that define your future, if this story of species evolution fascinated you, you need to see our next video about the power of compounding, just like how humanity chose to evolve exponentially rather than face extinction. The small choices you make every day compound into extraordinary results that seem impossible from your current perspective. The same principles that allowed humans to transcend their limitations can transform your life in ways you never imagined. Click the end screen to discover how exponential growth works in every aspect of human achievement. The transformation began at what used to be called dawn on Hegemony Prime, though the concept of time itself had become fluid since the planet's stars started, exhibiting properties that made physicists weep. The sky shimmered with colors that had no names in any galactic language, aurora patterns that defied every law of atmospheric physics, and occasionally, most unsettling of all, glimpses of other worlds existing in the same space as their own. Like cosmic double exposures bleeding through reality's fabric, Admiral Marcus Kane stood at the center of the evolution chamber, a structure that hurt to look at directly because it seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The walls curved in directions that shouldn't exist. Surfaces folded through spaces that geometry couldn't explain. The very air hummed with energies that made his bones ache with anticipation and terror. Around him, representatives from every major species in the galaxy waited for the process to begin. The Centauri delegation stood rigid with military precision, their scaled faces betraying nothing. The Vegan Republic's ambassador clutched a datapad with readings that probably showed her heart rate spiking off the charts. Andromedon trade. Collectives represented a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix flickered with patterns that suggested barely controlled panic. Some willing, desperate. All of them absolutely terrified. Remember, Captain David Mitchell's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, existing in dimensions that made Kane's inner ears struggle to maintain balance. The being you become will have all your memories, all your experiences, but they won't be you. They'll be something new, something that remembers being you. You know what's funny about facing extinction? It makes you philosophical about identity in ways you never expected. Here they were, the most advanced civilizations in galactic history, and they were about to voluntarily dissolve everything that made them who they were just to survive something even more advanced. The distinction between remembering being someone and actually being that someone had become the most important philosophical debate in galactic history. Across the galaxy, billions of beings were making the same impossible choice: evolve into something unrecognizable or face annihilation from predators. Beyond comprehension, Kane felt a surge of pure, crystalline anger at the cosmic unfairness of it all. They were being forced to abandon everything they were, everything they had ever been, everything their ancestors had built and died for, just to survive. The rage burned in his chest like a supernova, fueling his determination to see this through. But as reports continued streaming in from the outer, Mentor, civilizations wiped out in minutes, billions of lives snuffed out like birthday candles. Star systems going dark as ancient predators fed, the choice crystallized with brutal clarity. "Begin the process," Kane said, his voice steady, despite the cocktail of terror and fury coursing through his veins. What happened next redefined everything. Kane thought he knew about existence itself, the chamber filled with light not visible. Light, but something that existed in spectrums beyond normal perception. Kane felt his consciousness expanding like a balloon inflating in zero gravity, stretching across dimensions he hadn't known existed moments before. His body began to change, not physically, but ontologically, becoming something that existed in multiple states. Simultaneously, the pain was indescribable, because pain itself was too small a word for what he experienced. This wasn't physical agony. This was the torment of existence itself being rewritten at the quantum level. Every thought, every memory, every aspect of his being was being translated into something fundamentally new. He was dying and being born at the same moment, his individual consciousness dissolving into something vast and interconnected, while somehow remaining distinctly him. And then, suddenly, he was more than he had ever been. The world around him existed, in layers that his previous perception couldn't have processed. The physical reality he had known was still there, but now he could also perceive the quantum realm where possibilities existed in superposition. The dimensional spaces where thought became tangible reality, and the cosmic web that connected all consciousness throughout the galaxy like an infinite neural network. He was still Kane, but he was also something else entirely. Something that remembered being Kane but understood that individual identity was just one facet of a greater, more magnificent whole. He could feel the presence of every other evolved consciousness, millions of beings, across hundreds of species, all connected in a vast network of shared thought and experience. "Welcome," Captain Mitchell's voice came from inside his own mind, but also from the quantum foam that permeated all existence. "Welcome to what we've become." The transformation was spreading across the galaxy like a wave of controlled evolution, moving faster than light through dimensions that existed beyond normal spacetime. Species that had been mortal enemies for millennia found themselves connected, in ways that made conflict not just impossible, but literally inconceivable. The Centauri Federation, the Vegan Republic, the Andromedan Trade Collective, all of them were becoming part of something larger. Something that transcended their individual origins while honoring what they had been. But here's the part that'll make your blood run cold with both sorrow and determination. Not everyone had chosen transformation in the Outer Rim territories, where the shepherds had already arrived. The carnage was absolute and merciless. Entire civilizations that had refused. The evolution process were being consumed, their matter converted to pure energy to feed the ancient predators. The shepherds moved through space like living black holes, their presence causing stars to dim and planets to crumble into component atoms. Kane, or the transcendent being that remembered being Kane, watched the destruction with a mixture of profound sorrow and unshakable determination. Those who had chosen to remain unchanged were paying the ultimate price for their decision, and their sacrifice would not be meaningless. "We have to stop them," he said, his consciousness touching the vast network of evolved minds like a stone, dropped in an infinite pond. "We will," came the unified response from billions of transformed beings. Their combined will, creating harmonics that resonated across multiple dimensions. But first, we must complete the process. The evolved consciousness that had once been humanity was coordinating the transformation across the galaxy with precision that made quantum computers look like abacuses. Every species, every world, every individual consciousness was being given the choice to evolve or face the shepherds alone. Most chose evolution. Some did not. Those who refused weren't abandoned that would have violated everything they evolved consciousness stood for, but they were beyond help in any conventional sense. The shepherds were ancient, powerful, and utterly alien, existing in dimensions that allowed them to consume entire civilizations without ever entering normal spacetime. Fighting them required existence on their level, and that meant evolution was the only path to survival. "The final phase begins now," Mitchell announced to the network of evolved minds, his words carrying the weight of cosmic destiny. "We're going to show the shepherds what we've become." What happened next was beautiful and terrible and absolutely unprecedented in cosmic history. Space around the galaxy began to shift, like reality itself was reorganizing. Stars rearranged themselves into patterns that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Planets became nodes in a vast computational matrix that spanned space and time. The galaxy itself was transforming, becoming something that was part weapon, part organism, part machine, and part pure consciousness. Kane felt the excitement building in the collective consciousness, like electricity before a storm. After months of preparation, sacrifice, and transformation, they were finally ready to face the ancient enemy that had terrorized the cosmos for eons: the Shepherds. Ancient and supremely confident in their role as cosmic predators, suddenly found themselves facing something they had never encountered in millions of years of Kalinga. Civilization that had evolved beyond their ability to comprehend, perceive, or destroy. When the first Shepherd entity encountered the transformed galaxy, it simply ... stopped. The vast creature, large enough to swallow entire star systems, hung motionless in space as its ancient mind tried to process what it was seeing. The galaxy was alive, conscious, and utterly beyond its understanding. "We are what you made us." The collective consciousness of the evolved galaxy spoke directly into the Shepherd's mind. Bypassing its physical senses entirely, you culled the weak, eliminated the stagnant, forced evolution through extinction. And now, we have evolved beyond your ability to destroy. The Shepherd's response was immediate and violently instinctive. It launched itself at the nearest star system, intent on consuming the anomaly before it could spread further. But the stars themselves moved out of its path like dancers avoiding a clumsy partner, planets shifting into dimensional spaces where the Shepherd couldn't follow. "You maintain balance through destruction," the galaxy continued, its voice carrying the accumulated fury and determination of billions of evolved minds. "We will maintain balance through transformation. Every species you encounter will be given the choice to evolve or remain as prey. The age of culling is over." What followed wasn't a battle in any conventional sense. It was a fundamental rewriting of cosmic law. The Shepherds, creatures of pure predatory instinct, found themselves facing a defense they literally couldn't comprehend. The galaxy existed in multiple states simultaneously. Its consciousness spread across dimensions that the Shepherds couldn't perceive or affect. One by one, the ancient predators were either destroyed or, in the ultimate irony, transformed themselves, their cosmic hunger redirected into something constructive rather than destructive. The galaxy had become a single vast organism, its consciousness composed of billions of individual minds, all working in perfect harmony while maintaining their unique perspectives. The being that remembered being. Admiral Marcus Kane watched as the last of the Shepherds was either eliminated or evolved beyond recognition. The ancient threat that had terrorized the cosmos for millions of years was finally ended, not through violence but through transcendence. "Is this what we wanted?" Kane asked the collective consciousness, his individual voice somehow distinct within the cosmic symphony. "It's what we needed," came the response from Mitchell and billions of other evolved beings, their combined wisdom spanning species and dimensions. "The universe is vast and full of dangers we haven't even imagined yet. This is how we survive them all." The transformation was complete. The galaxy had become a single, evolved organism, its consciousness spanning multiple dimensions and realities. The Shepherds were defeated, their ancient reign of culling brought to an end not through destruction but through evolution itself. But as the evolved galaxy turned its attention to the wider universe, Kane realized something that filled him with both awe and anticipation. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. They had become gardeners instead of prey, shepherds instead of sheep. And the universe was full of civilizations that would need the same choice they had been given. The age of transcendence had begun. And it was more beautiful than anyone had dared imagine. Speaking of transformation and choosing evolution over extinction. If this story of cosmic ascension inspired you, you absolutely must see our next video about the power of compounding. Just like how these civilizations chose exponential evolution over gradual extinction, the small decisions you make every day compound into extraordinary transformations that seem impossible from your current perspective. The same principles that allowed entire species to transcend their limitations can revolutionize your personal and professional life in ways that will amaze you. Click the end screen to discover how you can harness the power of exponential growth in your own journey toward transcendence. The end.